The marsh is hungry. Not the ordinary hunger of seasons turning or rivers running low, but something older, something patient. The kind of hunger that waits beneath the fog and counts your heartbeats like coins. If you're watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's get to the story. Eloan Rusk kneels in the black mud at dawn, her fingers working around the base of a winter root that refuses to come free. The water in this part of the marsh runs copper-dark now, stained by something upstream that no one has investigated because no one has the courage left. Even the frogs have gone silent. When the frogs stop singing, the elders say, "The land is holding its last breath." She is 26 years old and alone in ways the word barely covers. Her father died coughing blood into his own medicine jars 18 months ago. Her mother's grave sits in the churchyard at the edge of Briarwick, slowly sinking as the ground grows soft. The villagers are leaving, one family at a time, chasing rumors of clean wells and work that actually pays. Yesterday the Baron's tax collector came and took the last of her dried mushrooms, called it payment deferred, smiled like he was doing her a favor. Eloan stays. Not because she is brave. Bravery requires believing something will work out if you fight hard enough. She stays because her father's ledger holds debts no one will forgive her for abandoning. She stays because leaving feels like admitting the world has already won. She stays because stubbornness, from far enough away, can look almost like courage. She is coaxing the root loose when she hears it. A sound that does not belong to water or wind or any creature that should be breathing in this dead place. Whoa. Ragged. A breath dragged through teeth that are trying desperately not to make noise. Coming from deeper in the reeds where the water turns black and even the desperate stop walking. Eloan should stand up. Should turn back toward her shack, her ledger, her empty shelves. The marsh has its predators now. Half-starved dogs and wild boars and the occasional man desperate enough to risk the fog. And this sound is bigger than any of those. Smarter than any of those. Like pain trying to hide itself from something hunting it. But Eloan has spent 18 months without a voice that answers back. 18 months measuring her survival in hours and tinctures and how far she can stretch bread with nettle soup. 18 months watching things die because there was nothing she could do except witness. She follows the sound. The reeds part into a hollow ringed with black willow trunks, and there in the half-shadow lies a wolf. Massive, broad-shouldered. For the color of wet night, darker than the water that pools beneath him. His flank rises and falls too fast, too shallow, the breathing of something whose body is giving up even while its will refuses. His muzzle is stained dark with his own blood. And in his shoulder, buried to the hilt, is a knife. Not a hunter's rough blade. Not a poacher's rusted iron. This knife is long and elegant, pale metal that seems to drink the thin marsh light, leaving nothing behind. A weapon made for courts, not wilderness. Made for assassination, not hunting. The wolf's eyes find her. They are not animal eyes. Gold deep as old coins. Ancient as something that remembers when the marsh was young. They hold her with a steadiness that makes the hairs lift on her arms and the breath catch in her throat. He should be snarling. Should be dragging himself away or lunging for her throat. Instead he watches, calculating, waiting, as if he understands exactly what she is and what she might choose to do. Eloan's hands are shaking. Her mind produces every sensible reason to run. Wolves kill. The marsh is unsafe. That knife was put there by someone who wanted him dead, and anyone who interrupts that plan becomes the next target. Then her mind produces something else. Her father's face in his last week, coughing himself hollow, asking her to stay even when staying meant nothing except refusing to let him die alone. The wolf makes a sound softer now. Not a growl, almost a plea. Eloan steps closer. The wolf's muscles tense beneath his matted coat, but he does not lunge. If anything, he goes absolutely still, granting permission in a way that no animal should understand how to grant. Close, she sees the wound is wrong. The flesh around the blade has turned gray, veined with a faint silver stain that spreads outward like frost on a windowpane. This is not rot. Not infection. This is something crafted, something designed to kill slowly and ensure the dying cannot be stopped. Poison. Not swamp poison. Something older. Something meant for creatures that are not entirely animal. Eloan's throat tightens. Her voice comes out steadier than her hands. This is going to hurt. Sorry. But if I don't pull it out, you'll die here. And I'm tired of watching things die because I didn't have the nerve to try. She grips the hilt. The metal is cold in a way that has nothing to do with the marsh water. Cold like a winter star. Cold like something forged in a place where warmth is forbidden. The wolf's golden gaze does not waver. He blinks once, slow and deliberate. Do it. Eloan braces her knee in the mud, draws a breath that tastes like copper and rot, and pulls. The knife comes free with a wet tearing sound that makes her stomach flip. Blood spills fast and dark, soaking into the black earth, and the wolf's body shudders as a sound rips out of him. Half howl, half broken cry, a sound of agony that rolls across the marsh and disappears into the fog. Eloan presses her scarf against the wound with both hands, feeling his blood soak through the cloth and warm her frozen fingers. No, she hears herself say, voice fierce despite the tremor running through her whole body. No, no, no. You don't get to go. Not after I've started this. Not after I chose. She fumbles for her pouch. Her father's old habits live in her hands even when her mind is screaming. Grind, pack, bind, pressure. She crushes marshmallow root and bitter dock between her shaking fingers, shoves it into the bleeding wound, wraps the shoulder tight with strips torn from her own overskirt. The wolf's breathing hitches, steadies, hitches again. And then, slowly, in reluctant increments, it begins to even out. His head shifts, heavy as river stone, and he rests it against Eloan's thigh. As if her leg were the only solid thing left in the world. As if she were safe when nothing else was. Eloan's eyes burn. She has not cried in months. Crying requires time she does not have. But something cracks open in her chest anyway. Something that has been sealed shut since the morning she buried her father with dirt still under her fingernails from digging. She does not leave. Night folds over the marsh like a burial shroud. The fog thickens until every tree becomes a watchful silhouette, every shadow a possible threat. Eloan builds a small fire on a patch of drier earth and keeps the flames low, just enough light to see the rise and fall of the wolf's breathing. She checks the bandage again and again, murmuring nonsense words just to prove there is still a voice in the world. My name is Eloan, she tells him, stroking the fur between his ears because it feels like apologizing to something sacred. I make remedies for people who can't pay, which makes me a fool according to the tax collector. I'm probably going to lose my father's shack. I haven't spoken to another person in 4 days, and the last conversation was the collector telling me I have 2 weeks before he takes the building itself. She pauses, watching the firelight play across his dark fur. But you. Someone meant you to die out here, didn't they? Someone put that knife in you and left you to bleed where no one would ever find the body. The wolf's ear flicks. His eyes open to slits, and for a single suspended moment Eloan feels something pass between them. Not words, not even thoughts, just understanding, settling like a held breath between two creatures who have both been left behind by everything that should have protected them. When dawn comes, pale and thin as watered milk, the wolf rises. He is even larger standing, shoulder nearly reaching Eloan's chest. He could have ended her life with a single snap of those massive jaws. The power coiled in his body is obvious now, the power of something born to rule, not to hide bleeding in marshland hollows. Instead of attacking, he lowers his head. It is a bow. Unmistakable. A gesture of acknowledgement that wolves do not make, have never made, should not know how to make. Eloan's mouth falls open. Her voice comes out small and strange. You're welcome. The wolf holds her gaze for one more heartbeat, something flickering in those golden eyes that looks almost like a promise. Then he turns and limps away into the reeds, his dark fur disappearing into the fog. But he pauses at the edge of the hollow, looks back, memorizes her face, and then he is gone. Eloan stands alone in the dawn mist, the bloody knife wrapped in the remains of her scarf, her hands stained red to the wrists. She should feel relieved. She should feel terrified about what she has just done. Instead she feels, for the first time in 18 months, like someone who exists outside her own survival, like someone who made a choice that mattered. She does not know that she has just saved a king. She does not know that the knife in her hands is evidence of treason. She does not know that somewhere in the fog men with silver-edged weapons are already hunting, already following a blood trail that leads directly to her village. She knows only this: the marsh is still hungry, and something in her heart has finally remembered how to be full. Eloan returns to Briarwick as the sun climbs high enough to burn thin patches through the fog. Her basket holds winterroot and feverleaf, her skirt is torn and mud-stained, and her hands are still faintly red no matter how many times she scrubbed them in the marsh water. The knife rides heavy against her hip, wrapped in what remains of her scarf, cold through the fabric in a way that makes her skin prickle whenever she thinks about it too long. The village looks the same as it did yesterday, the same as it looked last week. Smaller, somehow, every time she counts the dark windows and the doors that no longer open. The baker's shop closed 3 months ago. The blacksmith left for the northern cities in summer. Now even the families with children are packing carts and slipping away before dawn, as if leaving in daylight would require explanations none of them want to give. Eloan does not blame them. She simply cannot follow. Her father's shack sits at the edge of the village where the cobblestones give way to dirt and the dirt gives way to marsh. It is not much. 4 walls that need patching, a roof that leaks when the wind blows east, shelves lined with jars that are mostly empty now. But it is hers, and it holds the only things she has left. Her mother's dried lavender hanging from the ceiling beams. Her father's ledger with its impossible column of debts. The wooden table where he taught her to grind herbs and measure tinctures and believe that healing was worth something even when no one could pay. She spends the morning the way she spends every morning. Old Marin comes with her wet cough that will not stop, and Eloan gives her the last of the horehound syrup and refuses the 3 copper coins the woman tries to press into her palm. The Thatcher boy has an infected cut on his foot, and Eloan cleans it and wraps it and tells him to stay off it for a week, knowing he will be back in the fields by tomorrow because his family cannot afford a week of rest. She is the fool healer, the woman who works for nothing and somehow survives on less. It is not until evening, when the fog rolls back in and the silence settles thick as wool, that Eloan finds the first gift. A rabbit lies on her doorstep. Freshly killed, cleanly caught, no marks of struggle or trap. It has been placed there deliberately, positioned as if presented rather than dropped. Eloan stands in her doorway for a long moment, staring at it, her heart doing something strange in her chest. Rabbits do not present themselves. Hunters do not share with the fool healer who cannot pay. She thinks of golden eyes watching her through the reeds. The next morning brings firewood. A bundle of dry branches stacked against the side of her shack, cut clean and arranged with a care that speaks of hands rather than paws. Eloan runs her fingers over the cut ends and finds them smooth, as if sliced by something sharper than any axe in Briarwick. On the 3rd day she discovers the coins. They are hidden beneath her herb bench, tucked into a small leather pouch that was not there yesterday. Old mint, the kind she has only seen in Elder Senec's collection of curiosities. Coins stamped with symbols she does not recognize, worn smooth by time but still heavy with value. Enough to pay a month of her father's debts. Enough to buy food that is not nettle soup stretched thin with desperation. Wolves do not bring coins. Wolves do not cut firewood. Wolves do not watch from the dark like guardians posted by someone who cares whether she lives or starves. That night Eloan stands outside her shack as the fog thickens around her, feeling foolish and grateful and terrified all at once. She speaks into the gray silence because she cannot bear to hold the words inside any longer. "If this is you," she says softly, "thank you. I do not know what you want. I do not know what you are. But thank you for seeing me." A shape moves at the edge of the reeds. Dark fur against darker water. Gold eyes that catch the last light and hold it for one suspended heartbeat. Then the shape is gone, and Eloan is alone again, but the loneliness feels different now, like something shared rather than endured. She goes inside and unwraps the knife. Has not warmed. Not once, not even pressed against her body all day. The metal remains cold as a winter star, and where it touches the cloth, faint silver stains spread outward like frost forming on glass. Eloan holds it up to the candlelight and watches the blade drink the flame, giving nothing back. This is not a hunter's weapon. This is not iron or steel or anything that belongs in Briarwick. The next morning she visits Elder Sennick. He lives in a cottage at the far end of the village, surrounded by books that are falling apart and artifacts he claims to have collected during travels no one believes he actually took. He is 83 years old and mostly blind, but his memory holds stories that the rest of Briarwick has forgotten. Eloan shows him the knife without explaining where she found it. Sennick's fingers trace the blade with the careful reverence of someone handling sacred things. His clouded eyes widen. "Moonsteel," he whispers. "I have not touched moonsteel in 60 years. Where did you get this, girl?" "I found it in the marsh." Not entirely a lie. Moonsteel is not found, Sennick says. It is forged. In places humans are not meant to go, by hands that are not entirely human. He turns the blade over, his weathered face troubled. This metal binds shifters, holds them in whatever form they wear when it pierces their flesh. And if it is poisoned, as this surely was, it ensures they cannot heal, cannot change, cannot escape. Moonsteel is a tool for killing kings, child. Not wolves. Eloan's blood runs cold. What do you mean, shifters? The old stories. The fenward thrones beyond the northern marshes. Rulers who wear fur and flesh alike, who keep treaties with human villages in exchange for safe borders. Sennick shakes his head slowly. I thought those stories died with my grandmother. But if Moonsteel has returned to the world, then something old is stirring. And something old wants it dead. Eloan takes the knife back. Her hands are steadier than they should be, but her mind is spinning. Shifters, kings, treaties. A wolf with golden eyes who bowed to her in the dawn mist. She is still thinking about it when Harlvoss appears. The tax collector rides into Briarwick at midday, and this time he comes directly to Eloan's shack. His eyes are sharper than usual, his smile thinner. He dismounts slowly, looking at the fresh firewood stacked against her wall, at the smoke rising from her chimney, at the color in her cheeks that was not there a week ago. You seem to be doing well, he says. Better than expected for a woman with nothing. I manage. Managing requires resources. Voss steps closer, and Eloan forces herself not to back away. Resources you did not have when I visited last. Who has been helping you, Eloan? A suitor. A benefactor. No one. No one. He does not believe her. She can see it in the way his gaze travels to her herb bench, to the place where the coin pouch is hidden. Curious. The Baron will want to know if someone in this village has been holding back. Times are hard for everyone. He leaves, but the threat lingers like smoke. That afternoon a stranger arrives in Briarwick. He wears traveling clothes that are too fine for the roads, and he asks questions in the market square that make people nervous. Have they seen a beast in the marsh? A large wolf, perhaps injured, perhaps behaving strangely. The village has always had an understanding with the marsh creatures, has it not? Perhaps someone has been feeding them. Perhaps someone knows more than they are saying. Eloan watches from her doorway and does not go outside. That night she cannot sleep. The knife sits on her table, cold and silver-stained, and every creak of the wind sounds like footsteps. She dozes fitfully until the dogs wake her. Distant barking coming from the direction of the marsh. And beneath the barking, voices. Men's voices, carrying across the fog in fragments she cannot quite hear. Eloan rises and moves to her window. The fog is thick tonight, heavy enough to swallow sound, but she can see torchlight flickering at the edge of the reeds. 3 torches. Moving in a formation that speaks of hunting rather than searching. She pulls on her boots and slips outside, staying low, following the tree line until she is close enough to hear. Trail ends here. The blood stopped at the hollow, but he cannot have gone far. Eliminate the beast if you find it. The Alpha King has been missing for 3 days. If he is alive, he is weak. If he is weak, we finish what the knife started. And if someone in the village saw him, then they saw nothing. Or they become part of the problem. Eloan's heart stops. Alpha King. The words echo in her skull like thunder. She thinks of golden eyes, of a bow that should have been impossible, of gifts left in the fog by something that was not a wolf and not a man but somehow both. She saved a king. And now they are hunting him. And the trail leads directly to her. The torches begin to move toward the village. Eloan does not think. Thinking takes too long. She runs back to her shack, grabs her medicine pouch and the wrapped knife, and slips out the back door into the reeds. The fog swallows her. The marsh that has always been hungry opens its arms and takes her in. Behind her, the dogs begin to bark louder. The reeds cut at Eloan's arms as she runs, but she does not slow. Behind her the dogs are barking, the torches are spreading, and the voices of men who have come to kill a king echo across the water. Her feet know the marsh better than her mind does. They carry her through the black mud and over the rotting plank paths and around the sinkholes that have swallowed careless hunters for as long as Briarwick has stood. She finds him in the hollow where it began. The wolf is standing now, not lying broken in the shadows. His massive body is silhouetted against the fog, head raised, ears pricked toward the sounds of pursuit. The wound on his shoulder has closed, though silver scars trace the flesh beneath his dark fur. He is stronger than he was, healed in ways that should have taken weeks. He turns when she crashes through the reeds, and those golden eyes find her with an intensity that steals her breath. They are coming, Eloan gasps. She is shaking from the cold or the fear or both. Men with silver weapons. They said your trail ends here. They said to eliminate the beast, to finish what the knife started. The wolf's gaze shifts past her, toward the distant flicker of torches. He does not look surprised. If anything, he looks resigned, as if he has been waiting for this. You have to run. Eloan grabs at his fur, her fingers sinking into the coarse warmth of his coat. Please. They will kill you. Whatever you are, whoever you are, they want you dead, and I cannot watch that happen. Not after everything. Not after I chose. The wolf does not move. Instead he steps forward, placing himself between Eloan and the direction of the hunters. His muscles coil beneath his skin. His lips pull back from teeth that could tear through bone. He is not running. He is making a stand. No, Eloan hisses. You cannot fight them all. There are too many. Please, I am begging you, just go. I will lead them away, I will. The wolf turns his head and looks at her. And then he begins to change. It is not gentle. It is not the soft shimmer of fairy stories or the graceful unfolding of dreams. It is violent, inevitable, the sound of bone cracking and reforming, of muscle tearing and re-knitting in the space between heartbeats. The great wolf collapses inward as if gravity has suddenly remembered to pull harder, and in the hollow of the marsh, surrounded by black willows and rising fog, a man takes shape from the ruin of the beast. Eloan stumbles backward, her hand pressed against her mouth. He rises slowly, broad-shouldered, dark hair plastered to his skull with sweat and silver-streaked at the temples. His skin bears scars that match the wound she bandaged, and he wears a cloak that seems to have formed from mist and shadow, wrapping his body in something that is almost modesty. His face is hard and angular, beautiful in the way that storms are beautiful, dangerous in the way that deep water is dangerous. His eyes are the same, gold, ancient, a little too sad for someone born to power. Eloan Rusk, he says, and his voice is low and rough, as if he has been practicing her name in silence for days. You should have left me in the mud to die. Eloan's mouth opens and closes. Her brain produces no words. I am Kaelin Blackvein, he continues, Alpha King of the Fenward Thrones. And someone in my own court paid human hands to carve me open with moonsteel and leave me to rot in your marsh where no one would ever find the body. The torches are closer now. Eloan can hear the dogs straining against their leads, can hear the men calling to each other in voices that expect an easy kill. The knife, she manages. Elder Sennick said moonsteel binds shifters. Prevents healing. It does more than that. Kalen's jaw tightens. Moonsteel poisoned with wolfsbane locks us in whatever form we wear when the blade strikes. I could not shift, could not call my pack, could not do anything except crawl into the reeds and wait to die. His gaze holds hers with uncomfortable intensity. Until you pulled the blade free with your bare hands and refused to let me go. The hunters break through the tree line. There are 7 of them, spreading out to encircle the hollow. They carry weapons that gleam silver in the torchlight, blades designed for killing things that are not entirely human. 6 of them are rough men, mercenaries with hard eyes and harder hands. But the 7th is different. He wears clothing too fine for hunting, moves with the trained grace of someone who has learned to fight in courts rather than forests. His smile, when he sees Kalen standing in human form, is the smile of a man who has just watched a plan fall apart and is calculating how to salvage it. Alpha King, the fine man says. We were told you would be dead by now. Clearly your information was wrong, Varys. Kalen's voice carries a cold authority that makes even the mercenaries hesitate. Return to whoever paid you and tell them they have failed. I think not. Varys draws his blade. The payment was for a dead king, but a witnessed execution will serve just as well. And the woman? His eyes slide to Eloan, assessing, dismissive. She knows too much. Dispose of her with the rest. Kalen moves so fast Eloan barely sees it. One moment he is standing beside her. The next he is in front of her, body coiled, teeth bared in a snarl that is more wolf than man. Touch her, he says softly, and I will tear your throat out with my bare hands. Varys laughs. You are outnumbered, wounded, and alone. What exactly do you intend to do? Kalen throws back his head and howls. The sound is not human. It is not even entirely wolf. It rolls across the marsh like thunder over water, shaking the reeds, stirring the fog, reaching into the darkness and pulling something back. Eloan feels it in her bones, in her blood, in the primal part of her brain that remembers what it means to be prey. The fog answers. Eyes appear in the darkness. Gold and amber and pale silver. Dozens of them, surrounding the hollow in a silent, tightening circle. Wolves emerge from the reeds, massive and dark-furred, moving with a coordination that speaks of intelligence and absolute loyalty. And as they enter the torchlight, some of them begin to change. Men and women rise from wolf shapes. Warriors in leather and fur with blades already drawn and faces carved from stone. They do not speak. They do not need to. Their presence says everything that matters. The pack has arrived. Varys' face goes pale. The mercenaries break formation, stumbling backward, suddenly aware that they have walked into a trap rather than a hunt. Surrender, Kalen says, and his voice carries the weight of absolute command. Drop your weapons and you will live to face trial. Raise them and my wolves will leave nothing for the crows. For one terrible moment Eloan thinks Varys will fight anyway. His hand tightens on his blade. His jaw sets with desperate calculation. But the wolves are closing in, and the warriors who were beasts moments ago are armed and angry, and even a fool can recognize when odds have become impossible. The silver blade clatters to the ground. One by one the mercenaries follow. The pack binds them with swift efficiency, and Kalen watches with cold satisfaction that never quite reaches his eyes. When it is done, when the hunters have become the hunted, he turns to Eloan. She is shaking. She has not stopped shaking since the transformation. The world has rearranged itself around her, and she is still trying to find solid ground. You saved my life, Kalen says quietly. The warriors give them space, pulling the prisoners toward the tree line, and for a moment it is just the 2 of them in the hollow where everything began. You did not know what I was. You only knew that I was dying, and you chose to help anyway. I do not know how to repay that. I did not do it for payment. I know. Something flickers across his face, an emotion too complicated to name. That is what makes it terrifying. Eloan laughs, and the sound surprises her. It is not a happy laugh. It is the laugh of someone who has passed through fear into something stranger on the other side. I am a fool healer from a dying village. I pulled a knife out of a wolf because I was tired of watching things die alone. There is nothing terrifying about that. There is everything terrifying about that. Kaelin steps closer, and despite everything, Eloan does not back away. Kindness without expectation is the rarest thing in any world. Topples kingdoms. It changes fates. I do not want to topple anything. I want to go home and sleep for a week and pretend none of this happened. You cannot. The words are gentle but final. Varys was sent by someone in my court, someone who wants me dead and will not stop because one attempt failed. They know about you now. They know you removed the knife, that you are the reason I survived. They will come again, and they will come through you. Eloan's chest tightens. She thinks of her shack, her father's ledger, her mother's grave in the sinking churchyard. She thinks of Briarwick's dying lights and the tax collector's suspicious eyes and the stranger who asked too many questions. What are you saying? Come with me. Kaelin holds her gaze, and there is no command in his voice now, only request. To Fenward. To my court. As an honored guest under my direct protection. I cannot undo what saving me has cost you, but I can keep you alive long enough to decide what happens next. I am not a lady. I do not know anything about courts or kings or whatever politics nearly got you killed. I do not need a lady. A ghost of a smile crosses his face, the first she has seen. I need someone who will tell me the truth even when it is inconvenient. Someone who sees a dying wolf and chooses mercy over fear. I need someone human, Eloan. Someone who remembers what kingdoms are supposed to protect. The fog is thinning. Beyond the hollow, beyond the marsh, Eloan can see the distant glow of Briarwick. So small from here. So fragile. A village that has been dying for years, held together by stubbornness and habit and debts that will never be paid. She thinks of her father asking her to stay. She thinks of the wolf resting his head on her thigh in the darkness. She thinks of what it felt like to be seen for the first time in 18 months. Yes, she says. I will come with you. The word feels like a door closing and another one opening. Eloan does not look back at Briarwick's dying lights. She is afraid that if she does, she will never be able to leave. Kaelin nods once, and something in his expression settles. Relief perhaps. Or recognition. Then stay close, he says. The marsh is no longer safe, and the road to Fenward is longer than it looks. He turns and walks toward his waiting pack, and Eloan follows, clutching her medicine pouch and the wrapped knife that almost killed a king. Behind her, the fog swallows Briarwick whole. The Fenward seat rises from the northern marshlands like something grown rather than built. Black stone and reedwood twist together into towers that pierce the fog, walls that curve like ribs, windows that glow amber in the perpetual mist. It is both fortress and palace, wild and regal, a place where the line between civilization and wilderness has been deliberately blurred. Wolves patrol the outer walls alongside armored guards. Torches burn in iron brackets shaped like grasping claws. The air smells of smoke and pine and something older, something that makes Eloan's skin prickle with awareness. She has never seen anything so terrifying or so beautiful. The journey took 3 days through paths that should not have existed, guided by wolves who shifted into men and back again with casual ease. Eloan slept in caves lined with furs and ate meat roasted over fires that burned without smoke. She spoke little and watched everything, trying to understand the rules of a world she had stumbled into by accident. Now she stands in the great courtyard as servants appear from nowhere, as whispers follow her like shadows, as eyes assess her worth and find her wanting. The human healer, someone murmurs. The one who saved the Alpha King. Saved him or ensnared him. Look at her clothes. Look at her hands. Marsh mud and poverty. Eloan lifts her chin and does not respond. She has survived worse than whispers. They take her to chambers that are larger than her father's entire shack. Copper tub filled with steaming water. Gowns laid across a bed draped in furs. Servants who handle her with gentle efficiency, scrubbing the marsh from her skin and combing the tangles from her hair and dressing her in dark green silk that feels like wearing water. Eloan does not trust any of it. Kindness without strings is the rarest thing in any world, Kaelin said. She wonders what strings are attached to copper tubs and silk gowns and servants who smile without meeting her eyes. The spymaster finds her that evening. Maris Kestrel is a woman of perhaps 40, sharp-featured and silver-haired, with eyes that miss nothing and a voice that sounds like honey poured over broken glass. She appears in Eloan's doorway without announcement, leaning against the frame as if she has every right to be there. "The famous healer," Maris says. "I expected someone taller. I expected someone less obvious." Eloan does not rise from her chair. "If you wanted to question me, you could have simply asked." Maris's eyebrows lift. "Who says I want to question you? You are the spymaster. Everyone in the courtyard knew your name within an hour of our arrival. You have been watching me since I entered the gates, and now you appear alone in my chambers when the king is occupied elsewhere." Eloan folds her hands in her lap. "Ask your questions. I have nothing to hide." Something shifts in Maris's expression. Not warmth exactly, but a recalibration. She steps into the room and closes the door behind her. "Tell me what happened in the marsh." Eloan tells her. All of it. The sound in the reeds, the wolf with the knife in his shoulder, the cold metal and the silver-stained cloth and the gifts that appeared in the fog. She does not embellish. She does not soften. She describes pulling the blade free and watching Kaelin transform and standing behind him when the hunters came. And she does it in the same flat voice she uses when cataloging symptoms for a patient. When she finishes, Maris is silent for a long moment. "You could have made yourself sound more heroic," the spymaster says finally. "I could have. But you would have known I was lying, and then you would never trust anything I said again." Eloan meets her gaze steadily. "I am not a politician. I am a healer from a dying village who made a choice I still do not fully understand. If that makes me a liability, then tell me now so I can prepare for whatever comes next." Maris studies her for another long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she smiles. "I think," she says slowly, "that you might actually survive this court. Do not let anyone convince you otherwise." She leaves without another word, and Eloan is alone with the weight of everything she does not know. The days that follow establish a pattern. Kaelin keeps his distance in public, speaking to her only in passing, treating her with the formal courtesy reserved for honored guests. But in private the distance collapses. He visits her herb workroom in the evenings, a small chamber she claimed on the second day and filled with the dried plants she gathered on the journey north. He asks about marsh remedies and village healing and the properties of winterroot when prepared with honey instead of water. Eloan suspects he does not actually care about winterroot. But she answers anyway because the alternative is silence, and she has had enough silence to last a lifetime. "You carry guilt like armor," she tells him one evening, watching him examine a bundle of dried fever leaf with unnecessary concentration. "Every time someone mentions the assassination attempt, you flinch like you caused it yourself." Kaelin sets down the herbs. "I should have seen the betrayal coming. A king who cannot recognize enemies in his own court is a king who fails his people. A king who blames himself for the sins of traitors is a king who will exhaust himself before the real battle begins." Eloan takes the fever leaf back and begins sorting it into smaller bundles. "You did not put that knife in your own shoulder. Stop acting like you did." He is quiet for a moment. When he speaks, his voice is softer than she has heard it. "You are the first person in this court who has spoken to me like that since my mother died." "Like what?" "Like I am a man who makes mistakes instead of a king who must be infallible." Eloan's hands still on the herbs. She thinks of her father in his last weeks, refusing to admit he was dying because admitting it felt like giving up. She thinks of the loneliness that comes from being the person everyone needs and no one sees. "I am afraid," she admits quietly, "of being a useful story. The human healer who saved the Alpha King." A tale to tell at feasts and then forget when I am no longer convenient. Kaelin moves closer, not touching her, but close enough that she can feel the warmth radiating from his body. You are not a story, he says. You are the reason I am alive. And I do not forget debts. It is not a declaration of love. It is not even a promise of safety. But it is something, and Eloan holds it close like a candle flame in a cold room. Lord Othric Vale arrives 3 days later. He is everything Eloan expected from a court politician. Smooth, influential, loyal in ways that feel rehearsed. He greets Kaelin with perfect deference and barely glances at Eloan, but she feels his attention like a weight on her skin. He is assessing her, measuring her, finding her wanting. The human healer, Othric says at dinner that night, his voice carrying just far enough to be overheard. A touching story, certainly, but one wonders about the wisdom of bringing such a liability into the heart of Fenward. Humans are fragile, untrained, vulnerable to manipulation. The whispers grow louder after that. Eloan hears them in corridors and courtyards and the spaces between polite conversations. She planned it. She seduced the king. She used the knife incident to position herself for power. She is a witch from the marsh, a spy from human lands, a convenient story that will end badly for everyone involved. She ignores the whispers because responding to them would only make them worse. But she does not forget them. On the 7th night she finds the warning. It is tucked into her herb drawer, folded into a square of pale paper, written in ink that shimmers faintly silver. The handwriting is elegant and anonymous. Return the knife to the marsh, or you will drown in it. Eloan stares at the words for a long time. Knife. The moonsteel blade she pulled from Kaelin's shoulder, wrapped in blood-stained cloth, hidden in the bottom of her traveling pack. She has not shown it to anyone, has not spoken of it since arriving at Fenward. But someone knows she has it, and someone wants it back. She thinks of what Elder Sinnick said. Moonsteel binds shifters. Moonsteel is forged in places humans are not meant to go. Moonsteel is a tool for killing kings. The knife is not just a weapon. It is evidence. Evidence of who forged it, who paid for it, who planned an assassination that almost succeeded. It is a key to the conspiracy that tried to murder Kaelin in the marsh. And now someone is afraid she will use it. Eloan folds the warning and tucks it into her sleeve. She does not sleep that night. The announcement comes the next morning. Kaelin stands before his assembled court and declares that the Fog Moon convocation will proceed as planned. A celebration of the harvest season, a gathering of allied packs, a public demonstration that the Alpha King has survived and Fenward remains strong. The court erupts in excitement. Music and dancing and feasting. Visitors from distant territories. Security stretched thin across a palace filled with strangers. Eloan watches Othric Vale smile, and something cold settles in her stomach. The knife burns against her hip where she has hidden it. The convocation is in 3 days. The great hall of Fenward blazes with light and sound and color. Torches burn in iron brackets shaped like howling wolves. Musicians play instruments Eloan cannot name, producing melodies that feel ancient and wild and impossibly beautiful. Dancers move in patterns that shift from formal steps to something more primal, their masks glittering with silver and bone and polished obsidian. The air smells of roasted meat and mulled wine and the sharp green scent of crushed pine boughs scattered across the stone floor. Eloan stands at the edge of the celebration and tries to remember how to breathe. The gown they gave her is nothing like the simple silk of her first days at court. This is armor disguised as elegance. Dark green reed silk that flows like water when she moves, threaded with silver accents that catch the torchlight and shimmer like wolf markings in moonlight. Her hair has been braided with tiny iron beads that clink softly when she turns her head. She looks like she belongs here, and the wrongness of that feeling makes her skin prickle. The moonsteel knife rides against her thigh, hidden in a sheath sewn into the gown's layers. She has not let it leave her body since the warning appeared in her drawer. Kaelin finds her within the first hour. He moves through the crowd with the easy authority of someone who has spent his life being watched, stopping to speak with pack leaders and visiting nobles and the endless stream of people who want a moment of the Alpha King's attention. But his eyes keep returning to Eloan. Not obvious enough to cause scandal. Just enough to make her pulse quicken and her cheeks warm. Just enough to make enemies bolder. She sees it in the way conversations pause when she passes. In the way certain courtiers watch her with calculation instead of curiosity. In the way Lord Othric Vale raises his goblet in her direction and smiles. A smile that does not reach his eyes. "You look uncomfortable," Maris says, appearing at her elbow with the silent grace that makes her so effective at her work. The spymaster wears a gown of midnight blue that makes her silver hair gleam like starlight. "I am uncomfortable," Eloan admits. "I spent 26 years learning to survive in a dying village. I did not learn to survive a party. They are not as different as you might think." Maris's gaze sweeps the hall, cataloging threats with practiced efficiency. Both require reading the room. Both punish those who let their guard down. And both can kill you if you forget to watch your back. Before Eloan can respond, the first scream shatters the music. It comes from the eastern wing, followed immediately by the orange glow of flames and the crash of something heavy falling. Guards rush toward the commotion, drawing weapons, shouting orders. The dancers scatter in confusion. The music stutters and dies. "Fire in the archives," someone shouts. "The treaty records." More guards pour out of the hall, leaving gaps in the perimeter that close too slowly. Maris curses under her breath and moves toward the chaos, her hand reaching for a blade hidden somewhere in her elegant gown. Eloan stays where she is. Something feels wrong. Not the fire itself, but the timing, the precision of the distraction. She has seen staged crises before. In Briarwick, when bandits drew the men away from the village before striking at the unprotected homes. This is a diversion. She turns, scanning the hall, and sees them. 3 figures moving against the crowd, pushing toward her while everyone else pushes away. They wear the masks of festival guests, but their movements are too coordinated, too purposeful. And in their hands, barely visible beneath flowing sleeves, she catches the glint of silver. Moonstill. Eloan runs. Not toward the doors, which are too far and too crowded. Not toward the guards, who are occupied with the fire. She runs toward the servants' passage near the great hearth, the one she noticed 3 days ago when she was exploring the palace and memorizing exits because old habits die hard. The assassins follow. The passage is narrow and dark, lit only by the glow of the hearth at one end. Eloan's gown tangles around her legs as she runs. Her breath comes in sharp gasps. Behind her she hears footsteps, fast and coordinated, closing the distance with terrifying efficiency. "The hinge," one of them calls out. She is the hinge. Remove her and the king falls. Eloan does not understand what that means. She does not have time to understand. She reaches the supply alcove she spotted during her exploration and grabs the first thing her hands find. A pouch of powdered irritant herbs, the kind she uses to clear congested lungs. She spins and throws it directly into the face of the first assassin. He screams, clawing at his eyes as the powder burns. The second assassin stumbles over him, and Eloan uses the moment to grab a clay lamp from the wall and smash it on the ground. Oil spreads across the stone floor, slick and treacherous. The third assassin is smarter. He circles wide, avoiding the oil, his moon-steel dagger gleaming in the dim light. He is tall and broad-shouldered, and he moves like someone who has killed before and expects to kill again. "Clever," he says. "But you are not a fighter. You are a healer from a marsh village. You do not belong here." Eloan's hand closes around an iron candle stand, heavy and cold. "I have heard that a lot lately." He swings. The assassin blocks with his forearm, but the impact staggers him. Eloan does not wait to see if he recovers. She runs again, bursting out of the passage into a corridor she recognizes, a corridor that leads back to the Great Hall, back to Kaelin, back to the only person in this palace she trusts. She runs toward danger instead of away from it. The assassin catches her at the threshold of the great hall. His hand closes around her arm like a vice, spinning her around, and Eloan sees the moonsteel dagger rising toward her throat. Time slows. She thinks of her father dying in his own medicine jars. She thinks of the wolf resting his head on her thigh in the darkness. She thinks of Kaelin saying she was not a story. A howl shatters the air. The assassin's grip loosens as something massive and dark crashes into him from the side. Eloan stumbles backward, hitting the wall hard, and watches as a wolf the color of wet night tears through the remaining attackers with controlled, devastating precision. Not killing them, breaking them, leaving them alive but helpless on the stone floor. The wolf turns, and Eloan sees golden eyes that hold her with an intensity that steals her breath. Kaelin shifts. The transformation is faster this time, smoother, as if his body has remembered what it means to change. He rises from the wolf shape in the center of the great hall, in full view of every noble and pack leader and visiting dignitary who has not fled from the chaos. His cloak forms around him like shadow made solid. Blood stains his hands, but none of it is his. The message is unmistakable. She is under my protection. The hall goes silent. Maris appears with guards, and the chaos resolves into controlled aftermath. The fire is contained. The assassins are bound and dragged away for questioning. The guests whisper behind their hands, but no one dares speak aloud. Eloan finds herself in a private chamber with Kaelin and Maris, her hands still shaking, her gown torn and stained with oil. The iron candle stand is somehow still clutched in her grip. They called me the hinge, she says. Her voice sounds strange, distant. They said if they removed me you would fall. Maris spreads documents across the table. Letters, payment records, a chain of transactions that begins in Fenward and ends in a village called Briarwick, routed through a tax collector named Harl Voss. At the center of everything, a name that makes Eloan's stomach drop. Lord Othric Vale. The knife was part of a coup plan, Maris says grimly. If you died in the marsh, a council regency would claim power until a suitable successor could be chosen. Vale would control the council. He would control Fenward. And Eloan. Kaelin's voice is cold enough to freeze water. Evidence. The human healer who knew too much, who carried the moonsteel blade, who could tie Vale to the assassination. Maris shakes her head. Killing her removes the witness and destabilizes you emotionally. 2 problems solved with 1 dagger. Kaelin's hands curl into fists. Execute them. All of them. Tonight. No. The word comes from Eloan before she realizes she is speaking. Kaelin turns to her, surprised, and she forces herself to continue. Execution creates martyrs. Vale has allies, supporters, people who believe his version of events. If you kill him without trial, without public evidence, you become the tyrant he claimed you were. His network survives. His cause survives. Then what do you suggest? Eloan sets down the candle stand. Her hands have stopped shaking. Strip him publicly. Present the evidence before the court. Let everyone see what he did and why. Exile him to the borders. Break his alliances. Dismantle his power piece by piece. Execution ends a man. Truth ends a movement. The room is silent. Kaelin stares at her for a long moment, and something shifts in his expression. Not just respect, recognition, the acknowledgement of an equal. A formal trial, he says slowly. Before the full court. Before everyone who might have been tempted to follow him. Maris makes a sound that might be approval. Kaelin nods once, decision made. Summon the court, he says. Tomorrow we begin. The trial convenes at dawn. The great hall fills with every noble and pack leader and visiting dignitary who witnessed the chaos of the convocation. Othric Vale stands before the assembled crowd, bound but unbowed. His elegant features arranged in an expression of wounded dignity. And as the proceedings begin, as the evidence is laid out, as the witnesses speak their truths, Vale catches Eloan's eye across the hall. He smiles. The smile of a man who still has leverage. The smile of a man who is not finished yet. Eloan's hand finds the hidden knife at her thigh. The trial is only beginning. The trial stretches through the morning like a wound being slowly cleaned. Maris presents evidence with the precision of someone who has spent her life collecting secrets and knowing exactly when to reveal them. Coded letters written in Othric Vale's own hand. Procurement records for Moonsteel traced through 3 separate forges. Witness testimony from the captured assassins, men who chose confession over silence when faced with the weight of their failure. The court listens, some with horror, some with carefully concealed satisfaction. A few with the dawning realization that they backed the wrong side and must now calculate their survival. Othric Vale stands through all of it. His elegant features arranged in wounded dignity. His chains somehow looking like accessories rather than restraints. He does not interrupt. He does not protest. He waits, patient as a snake coiled in tall grass, until Maris finishes and the hall falls into expectant silence. Then he speaks. A compelling performance, he says. His voice carrying effortlessly across the stone chamber. But performances require actors, do they not? And what better actor than a woman who appeared from nowhere, who claims to have saved the Alpha King through convenient coincidence, who carries the very weapon used in the assassination attempt. The whispers begin immediately. Eloan feels them like insects crawling across her skin. The human healer, Othric continues, turning to address the crowd rather than the throne. The Witch of the Marsh. She removes a moonsteel blade from our king's shoulder and somehow survives the encounter. She arrives at Fenward with evidence that conveniently points to the king's political rivals. She weaves herself into his confidence, his chambers, his decisions. He pauses for effect, and Eloan sees doubt flickering across faces that were certain moments ago. I submit that the true conspiracy began in the marsh, with a woman clever enough to turn an assassination into an opportunity. I submit that the evidence presented here was planted by hands that knew exactly where to find it. I submit that Eloan Rusk is not a victim but an architect. The hall erupts. Voices rise in argument and accusation. Guards shift uneasily. Kaelin's expression hardens into something dangerous, and Eloan sees his hands curl against the arms of his throne. She does not wait for him to speak. May I address the court? Her voice cuts through the chaos, steady despite the tremor in her chest. The hall quiets. Kaelin nods once, and Eloan steps forward. She reaches into her gown and withdraws the wrapped moonsteel knife. Lord Vale claims I am an architect, she says, unwrapping the blade slowly, deliberately. Let us examine the evidence of my supposed genius. She holds up the blood-stained cloth that has wrapped the knife since the marsh. This is the fabric I used to carry the blade. You can see the silver staining where the poison seeped through. This staining pattern is consistent with moonsteel contamination over a period of several days, not planted evidence created in haste. She withdraws a folded paper from her sleeve. These are my notes on the poison's composition, written in my own hand the night I arrived at Fenward. Marshmallow and bitter dock are not typical treatments for moonsteel poisoning. I used them because they were what I had. A court physician can confirm the residue on the blade matches my notes. She turns to face Othric directly. And this is the payment trail through Harl Voss, the tax collector in Briarwick who took the last of my mushrooms as payment deferred 3 days before I found the wolf in the marsh. The same Harl Voss who appeared in my village asking questions about my sudden prosperity. The same Harl Voss whose name appears in Lord Vale's coded letters as a trusted intermediary. The silence that follows is absolute. I am a healer from a dying village, Eloan says, her voice growing stronger. I had no money, no connections, no reason to know that moonsteel exists or that Alpha Kings can wear wolf skin. I pulled a knife from a dying creature because I was tired of watching things die alone. That is not genius. That is grief refusing to become cruelty. She sets the knife on the table before Kaelin's throne. Lord Vale's conspiracy required the king to die unwitnessed in human territory. It required no surviving evidence, no moonsteel blade to trace back to its source, No inconvenient healer stumbling upon the body before the poison finished its work. Everything I represent is a failure of his plan, not a success of mine. Othric's composure cracks. She lies. She must be lying. No human could simply. Enough. Kaelin rises from his throne, and the word carries the weight of absolute command. The hall goes still. Lady Kestrel's evidence is verified. The healer's account is consistent with every investigation. Lord Vale's defense rests entirely on convincing this court that a woman with nothing to gain fabricated a conspiracy more complex than anything I have seen in 20 years of rule. He descends the steps of the throne slowly, and with each step, Othric Vale seems to shrink. I find you guilty of treason, conspiracy, and attempted regicide. The word hangs in the air. Othric's face goes pale, his careful composure finally shattering. The sentence, Kaelin continues, his voice cold as winter stone, would traditionally be death. Eloin steps forward. Your Majesty, may I speak to the sentence? The hall stirs with surprise. Kaelin pauses, and something passes between them that the court cannot read. He nods. Execution ends a man, Eloin says, addressing both the king and the assembled court. It does not end a movement. Lord Vale has allies, sympathizers, people who will remember him as a martyr if he dies today. His death becomes a rallying cry. His cause survives. She turns to face the crowd directly. Strip him instead. Remove his titles, break his alliances, confiscate his holdings. Send him and his conspirators to border labor under watch, where they cannot plot and cannot escape. Use his wealth to pay reparations to the villages harmed by his schemes, villages like Briarwick where tax collectors stole food while people starved. Eloin's voice grows stronger. Commission an inquiry into Moonsteel procurement. Find the forges, find the traders, find every link in the chain that makes weapons designed to kill kings. Dismantle the conspiracy root and branch, and let the world see it happening. Truth defeats treason. Mercy defeats martyrdom. The hall is silent. Kaelin stares at her for a long moment, and Eloin cannot read his expression. Then slowly he inclines his head. The sentence is modified. Lord Othric Vale is stripped of all titles, lands, and alliances. His holdings are confiscated for reparations to affected territories. He and his conspirators are condemned to border labor for the remainder of their natural lives, under perpetual watch. Kaelin's gaze sweeps the hall. An inquiry into Moonsteel trade will begin immediately. Those who cooperate will be treated with leniency. Those who do not will join Lord Vale at the borders. Guards drag Othric away. His final expression is not defeat but bewilderment. The look of a man who cannot understand how he lost to a marsh healer with mud still under her fingernails. The court disperses slowly, voices buzzing with the weight of what they have witnessed. Eloin remains where she stands, exhausted and trembling and somehow still upright. Kaelin descends to stand beside her. Walk with me. They move through the palace in silence, past guards and servants and courtiers who bow and stare and whisper. They climb a tower Eloin has never entered, emerging onto a balcony that overlooks the marshlands stretching endlessly beneath the pale sky. You changed the sentence, Kaelin says quietly. In front of the entire court. You told a king how to rule. I told a man what I believed was right. You could have ignored me. I could have. He turns to face her, and his expression is something she has never seen before. Vulnerable. Uncertain in a way that kings are not supposed to be. But you were correct. And you were brave enough to say it when saying nothing would have been easier. Eloin shakes her head. I was terrified. I am still terrified. Terror and courage are not opposites. Terror is what makes courage possible. Kaelin takes her hands, and his grip is warm and steady. Eloin Rusk. You saved my life in a marsh hollow because you could not bear to watch another creature die alone. You survived assassins with powdered herbs and an iron candle stand. You stood before my court and spoke truth when lies would have been safer. You are the most remarkable person I have ever known, and I do not want to rule without you beside me. The words settle into Eloan's chest like something fragile finally finding solid ground. I am not a queen, she whispers. I do not know how to be a queen. I am not asking you to be a queen. I am asking you to be my partner, my equal. The voice that tells me when I am wrong and the hand that steadies me when the weight becomes too heavy. Kaelin's grip tightens. You make me choose a better kingdom. Stay and help me build it. Eloan thinks of Briarwick, of her father's ledger, of the grave that is probably underwater by now, sinking into the hungry marsh. She thinks of 18 months of loneliness and silence and survival without hope. Yes, she says. I will stay. The weeks that follow reshape Fenward in ways Eloan never imagined. She establishes the Marsh Initiative, sending medicine caravans to human villages along the borders, restoring clean water routes that have been neglected for generations. Kaelin opens treaty talks with human territories, negotiating protections rather than predation, building bridges where there were only walls. The Moonsteel Inquiry uncovers forges in 3 territories. 2 are shut down. The 3rd requires military intervention. Slowly, carefully, the weapons designed to kill kings become harder and harder to find. On a morning bright with early spring, Eloan and Kaelin return to the marsh hollow where it began. The fog is thinner now. Sunlight breaks through in golden shafts, illuminating water that runs clearer than it has in years. And as they stand in the place where Eloan pulled a knife from a dying wolf, she hears something she has not heard in longer than she can remember. Frogs, singing. I thought mercy was small, she says softly. One desperate choice that would not change anything. I thought I was just too stubborn to walk away. Kaelin takes her hand. Mercy is a spark. In the right hands, it becomes a wildfire. He pulls her close, and his voice drops to something private and fierce. You lit it, Eloan. You saved a wolf in the mud, and in doing so, you saved a kingdom that had forgotten what it was meant to protect. Eloan leans into him, feeling the warmth of his body against hers, listening to the frogs sing in a marsh that is finally beginning to heal. She saved a life because she could not bear to watch another death. She did not know she was saving herself. She did not know she was saving everything. But mercy, it turns out, does not require knowing. It only requires choosing. And Eloan Rusk, who was never brave, who was only stubborn enough to look like courage from far away, chose. The marsh remembers.